I'm Kyle Lim, part of the Education Justice team at the Urban Core Collective.
And I'm Erica Van Dyke. I'm also on the Ed Justice team.
You want to talk about UCC?
Yeah, so UCC is a 501c3 organization or a racial justice organization, and we do community organizing. So we do that across a couple of bodies of work. Our education justice team, of course, but we also work in climate justice, democracy, and we run a leadership program for folks of color called the Transformational Leaders Program.
This year, the MEJC decided to move forward with a ballot initiative called Invest in My Kids or Invest in Michigan Kids. The reason behind that is we've been struggling to appropriately fund our schools for many, many years. And what Invest in My Kids is trying to do is ensure that we have some dedicated funding via a ballot initiative, a constitutional amendment that would ensure that our schools are receiving additional funding for the next foreseeable future.
Education only helps businesses, right? I think that we've seen that small businesses in particular do best in neighborhoods that have strong schools, that have strong communities. And so I think for us, it's really important that business communities come around something like this to support our education, our students, our teachers.
Over 70% of Michigan young people attend local public schools. And if these schools do not have the resources that they need to provide the adequate level of services that we expect them to have, there's going to be big implications up the pipeline for business and stuff like that. So when we talk about investing in kids now, investing in Michigan kids, we really see that as an investment in the future, both for our local economies, but also for the state economy as well.
Oh, this ballot initiative in particular works by adding a 5% tax surcharge to individual income that's above $500,000 or $1 million if you file your taxes jointly. So it's impacting a pretty small percentage of the Michigan population, a little bit less than 2% of the population, and it's going to generate more than $1 billion annually for our schools. And so when we think about the impacts that this will have, right, this is impacting folks all across Michigan. We know that there's business owners all across Michigan that are going to benefit from this ballot initiative.
If we think about the ways in which teachers feel that sense of value, right? Being put into situations where your working conditions are incredibly hard, you're not being appropriately compensated, you're overworked, you're stressed, right? All of these things, when we look at the system, we understand why it might be functioning that way. But if we start with the individual, if we start with the person themselves, we begin to figure out how we can build a system in ways that care for the people that exist within them. And that when we do that and we start from that space and we build from there, that our systems begin to look very, very different than how they are currently designed. Similar to students, right? If you ask a student about their experience in school, you begin to get a sense of what they want in that space, a sense of belonging, being valued and heard, right? But then you look at things like the food that they're given, right? How does that promote a sense of value when their lunches don't feel, for many of them, even edible, right? When they feel like, oh, I don't even have a teacher in my classroom to teach me. We're throwing our most treasured constituents, right? Our most treasured people into systems that really are not thinking about their well-being and are not designed to care for them in holistic ways. And so, you know, that's what the kind of systems that we hope to create moving forward.
And I think as we see an increasing movement to bring communities into schools, right, there's this huge opportunity, whether that's if you are, right, a business owner, or if you're a parent who, you know, maybe one afternoon a week you come and volunteer at the school, right? Maybe you're a neighbor and you take really seriously the responsibility of making sure that your sidewalk and the road leading up to the school is a safe place for kids maybe who walk to school, right? Maybe You have a partnership with different mental health clinicians who volunteer their time, right? Like all of these are opportunities for folks to come around our young people, to come around our teachers. And that's really beautiful, right? Like that's this huge, really beautiful opportunity for us to, again, right? I keep coming back to this, to create the kind of community that we want to see, this caring community where folks, again, feel that sense of belonging, feel like they have a place to go. And so when I think, about a people first approach, those are the things that really come to mind for me.
Yeah. We see education really as a sort of foundational infrastructure that everything else can get built upon, right? So if you have a strong foundation, if we have students who are well versed in the skills and the knowledge that they need to enter into their next step, that's just going to benefit all of us as a whole, right? You have workers that come in with strong knowledge bases that are able to jump right into the economy.
Overall, we see a lot of folks in Michigan with a really strong entrepreneurial spirit, right? We see folks wanting to get into this space. And then as companies grow, right, and we see some of our larger businesses, we're hearing folks saying that, students are coming out of high school maybe not prepared to enter the workforce in the way that they're looking for. And so I think too, when we think about, a lot of times when we think about education, we think maybe about some of this primary education, right? Like we think about our younger students, but I think we're hearing calls across the state in particular for folks to make sure that students are leaving high school prepared to enter the workforce, right? Or prepared for that next step of higher education or whatever that might be. So I think when we're investing in education, we're also investing in that longer term success of the local businesses that we care about as an organization as well.
Absolutely. About 70-80% of our local school district are students that I would say are economically disadvantaged, because we're really, really struggling both to recruit teachers into the workforce. Teachers are some of the most underpaid workers. I say that, as husband of a teacher as well. And what this initiative would do is it would allow some of this $1 billion in tax capture that we talk about to be diverted towards teacher pay, right? So if you imagine suddenly a 27-to-1 ratio transforming maybe to an 8-to-1 or even a 12-to-1, and suddenly that feels so much different, both for a teacher's experience, but also for the students that are able to have that kind of one-on-one attention.
And teachers, they care so deeply about their students, right? They want their students to succeed so much. And I believe that district leaders do as well. It's easy to convince folks that education is important, but we need to see those resources behind it, right? We need to be showing up for our students and families. This is the kind of community we want, right? We want a community where our teachers have the resources they need to be successful, where students can thrive.
And what we're really saying is that our kids now deserve some of those similar kinds of experiences that each and every one of us were able to have. And that's our hope moving forward, is that we can rebuild some of that education infrastructure that really has been divested from.
We see a lot of teacher turnover because being a teacher is demanding. I think a lot of families learn that in a really tough way during the pandemic, right? They were like, wow, these teachers, they're not getting paid enough for what they do, right? And I think we get to work with a lot of really cool high school students with some of our programming. And we hear from them about how important it is to have those long-term relationships with teachers, right? How important it is for teachers to be able to have the energy to build those relationships, right? To stay in their buildings. And by having this additional funding to keep teachers in the classroom, right? To attract folks to education and to want to be in these spaces, that's a piece of it too, right? That community building, those relationships, that longevity. For me, that's something that's really important about this initiative. Well, a piece of this work that we really like to highlight is something called the Opportunity Index. So we know that for students or for school districts that have a high concentration of students that maybe are living in poverty, they're going to need some extra resources oftentimes to catch up, right? It's going to cost more for the district to educate all of the students that they're responsible for. And so the Opportunity Index breaks school districts into 5 bands based on what they say is concentration of poverty. And then it allocates additional resources to the districts with these higher levels so that there's additional funding to make sure that these students and families are supported. This language isn't written into the ballot initiative, but it's something that we think is really, really important. The state of Michigan passed legislation a couple of years back that allows for this, but each year legislators have to vote to put some of the money from the state aid fund through this formula, through this Opportunity Index. And so when we think about the implementation of this amendment, we want to make sure that that's happening, right? It's really important that we consider the bigger context that students exist in.
Poverty is not the only dimension within schools that require additional resources to support students, right? We can think about the differentiation between how poverty looks in urban settings versus rural settings, right? We can think about some places have high concentrations of English language learners that require a different sort of support system than native English speakers. Similarly, with students with disabilities, right? They require sometimes significant amount of resources to appropriately give them the education that they deserve and need. And what this funding would do would allow us to maintain some of those categoricals in ways that do not require schools to kind of pull back on those services, which we've seen many of them doing in the recent years as budgets get tight. What this amendment would do would create dedicated funding to the school aid fund that would not be able to get taken away, right? This is a constitutional amendment. This is where the money goes. We need to protect then the other revenue streams that are also going into the school aid fund.
Yeah, there's at least 3 ways I can think of right off the bat. So for one thing, we need to collect a lot of signatures, right? So our goal for Invest in My Kids is to get this on the ballot in November 2026, so next fall. In order to do that, we need to collect some 700,000 signatures across the state, which is a lot of boots on the ground, right? So as urban,
this is an entirely volunteer-run campaign.
Everybody's pitching in where they can. So at Urban Core Collective, we're training folks, right? We're making sure folks have information about the campaign and about how to correctly collect signatures. So that's something we need. If you are a business owner who really cares deeply about education, you want to go kind of the extra mile and get out and collect those signatures, we've got a link for you to sign up for a training. Businesses are a really great place where if you have someone at your front desk all the time, right, who's trained to do this, every time folks come in, right, you can be mentioning this and offering them the opportunity to support our students and teachers. Another way is to sign the petition. Maybe you don't have that extra capacity, right? But we're at UCC at least 3 times a week with open office hours where folks can come in. We're also out in the community all the time at different events and things trying to collect signatures. So meet up with us there. We'll share that information as well. And then the third way is to endorse this campaign, right? Like if you recognize the value of education and its intersection with business, we've got a form for you to fill out where you can share your endorsement and let other folks know this is important to me. Again, this is the kind of community that I want to see.
I got one more for folks. If you're watching this, you're likely already somewhat aligned with, a people-first approach to things and wanting to design systems in ways that benefit communities as a whole. And I'd say, talk to your people. If you're a business owner, if you're in spaces where you recognize that you have some power and influence, I encourage you to get the facts, talk to your folks, lean into the importance of why we need to be investing in education and investing in young people, and become a bit of a champion for this work. If you're not able to get out and collect signatures, maybe an endorsement is a little bit too risky for you. You can use your social capital and your influence to be able to bring other people into the movement as well.